Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Inside View. My name is Jim Bailey, and I'm here with Cory Burnell, and we're going to talk about yesterday's exciting election, both national and local. Cory?
Yeah, Jim, that was something else, man. Of course, anybody who's had their TV on since last night has had their living room or TV room lit up with all sorts of talking heads and excitement. Everybody being surprised and shocked. And with the propositions, a lot of things we didn't think would happen too.
And the recall.
Yeah, and the recall here locally. Wow, I mean, that was quite a spread.
That's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
So where should we go first?
Oh, man, you want to talk about local stuff first, or you want to go national?
I'm going to let you pick.
All right, well, okay, you bring up the recall there last. And man, I was surprised. You know, we were covering it live last night, and to see a 63% plus vote yes for the recall was, I mean, shocking. I mean, hey, none of the polls had it going that heavily in favor of the recall, so that was surprising. But I guess it really speaks to grassroots organization. I mean, that group that was so motivated for that outcome was very well organized.
And of course, we're talking about District 1 Supervisor Steve Kearney.
Yes, yeah,
recalled.
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
And where's, just in case people don't know, and I'm sure they do, but District 1 encompasses...
Well, a slight correction, it was District 5.
Ooh,
yeah, because District 1 was Cliff Edson and Gary Tofinelli with a regular election. But to answer your question about where District 1 ends and District 5 begins is Vista Del Lago in Valley Springs. As I understand it, this is hearsay, so don't hold me to it. But as I understand it, as a Valley Springian or Rancho Calaveras site since 2004, I've always understood District 5 begins at Vista Del Lago. Mm-hmm. Is that south? Or, yeah, I think it's south. And then, north of Vista Del Lago is District 1. So Valley Springs is kind of split, with Rancho Calaveras being in District 5, and then older Valley Springs or toward San Andreas being District 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I know Gary used to be a supervisor before, Tofinelli, but I can't remember, was he District 1 supervisor before?
Yes, he was. So that didn't change for him this time around. He was also running in District 1 this time around. So it was two election cycles before. He was our supervisor for 4 years in District 1, and he served one term, and then Cliff Edson replaced him, and people will know Cliff from his restaurant here in San Andreas, and so he replaced Gary for one term, and now Gary will be replacing Cliff. So the odds-on bet is next election Cliff replaces Gary, and we just kind of go through a round robin, I guess.
So I did read a little interview with Cliff today, and he said, "I think
he might want to stick to the restaurant business."
Enough, yeah.
I'll tell you what, if you're an elected official, and any elected officials watching this know what I'm about to say is, hey, you're upset half the people all the time, right?
Kind of like a weatherman. It's going to 50% chance of rain today.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, knowing that Steve did get recalled, clearly someone took his place.
Yeah, Clyde Clapp, and I don't know Clyde personally, but obviously the voters, he had a 33% return there. So the voters like him and know him, and I know his name and of him, and I know his reputation is very good and precedes him very nicely. So we're probably in good shape going forward. But Steve was a great supervisor too. So I was a little surprised by the recall result. I prefer personally that, hey, we have these job interviews every 4 years. Mm-hmm. I'm not really excited about recalls unless somebody has done something really outrageously, perhaps illegal, or something that maybe violates their oath of office to a significant extent, well, to any extent really. And I don't know that Steve did that, but hey, the voters decided that he had, and they decided almost 2-1. Yeah.
And I was trying to remember, I don't remember another recall in the county in the last...
I remember attempts, but they failed, yeah. So that's why I kind of figured this attempt would fail as well. But, well, it didn't, and so now on to the next stage.
Well, the polls can be wrong.
Yeah, imagine that. Huh?
The polls can be wrong.
I do my polling like this.
Well, if you did that, you probably, I don't know if you had your finger out in the
Yeah,
Trump breeze, but
I jest, but I just really didn't see that one coming. But
it was significant, the amount of states, if you look at the electoral map, you really just see a lot of states going for the Republican candidate.
Well, yeah, if we shift to the national polls, I think the one thing that really wasn't being discussed as I watched the political punditry going into the election, I didn't see much discussion about the nature of polls and how they are generated. And what I'm getting at is a very important ingredient in polling is on the national level is that they call likely voters.
Right.
That's who they phone, right? Likely voters. We all hear that in the disclosures. In a poll of likely voters, this is real. But two significant ingredients in that. Likely voters are they're calling recent voters. Last few elections, right? So two very important ingredients with that. Likely voters recently were Barack Obama voters. Well, Barack Obama was not on this ballot. And he's also significantly different than Hillary Clinton from a demographic standpoint. So there's some demographics involved in the likely voters that maybe, and apparently as evidenced, didn't show up at the polls last night like they did 4 years ago for Barack Obama and 8 years earlier. The other ingredient about polling likely voters is the Trump movement, you might say, is made up of a lot of voters who hadn't voted since Ross Perot. Yep. Some independents and some outside the beltway type of mindsets and people who felt like they've been essentially forgotten by the Washington establishment for a long time. So they don't get a phone call during the polls, right?
Sure.
When you're running the polling, they're not a likely voter and they don't get called. So you're calling somebody who says, yeah, I'm a Hillary Clinton supporter, but that person then hangs up and doesn't show up at the polls on Tuesday because, well, they're not all that excited. It's not Barack Obama,
right.
Okay? And they don't call the guy who's really excited about Donald Trump. So I think those two ingredients are why the polls were so dramatically wrong.
And it seems that they were looking at the number of votes, total voters, and it seems a little lower than they would have expected when people were so excited, especially on the Republican side, to say, here's someone who's not a long-term politician. This is our chance to work out some of the problems in government by bringing someone in who's not part of that establishment. And so those voters probably didn't vote in the last few elections. This is their chance to make that kind of statement.
Yeah, to say, hey, I'm just sick and tired of Washington, D.C. as it is. A follow-up thought on that is we oftentimes hear that there's two parties in America, the Democrats and the Republicans, right? And I would venture to say that this election has actually made the case that the two parties are establishment and non-establishment, right? And as evidence to that is think about one of the most establishment politicians in the last 40 years. George Herbert Walker Bush, the first Bush president, okay? Goes back to the 70s, involved in politics, vice president for 8 years with Reagan, becomes president. He is an establishment guy to the core. And he came out and said he was going to vote for Hillary Clinton. So I asked the question, which party does George Herbert Walker Bush really belong to? The establishment party. So here he crossed the political party spectrum from Republican to Democrat, but essentially evidencing the case I'm making that really there's the establishment and the non-establishment. And when it comes right down to it, he's establishment. And that's what he said.
You put the icing on that cake, you have your Bernie Sanders supporters, who again are fairly, even though he's in the government, those ideas are outside the beltway.
That's right. Yeah.
When he didn't get that nomination, those voters, did they turn out for Clinton? Or did some of them cross over and vote for Trump? Probably
Interesting.
Some crossed over with that same feeling of, we're tired of the way things are going. We're tired of the current system. We need to throw something in there that's at least going to give us a chance to make some changes. Because if we vote for Clinton, we're just going to get, and not necessarily rightly or wrongly, but you're going to get that same political weight that's been in there for a long, long, long time.
Right. Yeah, that would be the sentiment, I would think, that you're essentially voting for the status quo. Yeah.
The one party.
Yeah, that one party up there in D.C. Yeah, the establishment. Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting. It's going to be an interesting 4 years on that.
Yeah. Yeah, particularly if we're at all accurate here that there really are these two parties of establishment and non-establishment, it will be interesting to see how well Trump gets along with other Republicans who actually are part of the establishment.
Sure.
You know, and to see that inter-party conflict will evidence whether we're on the right track here, as the non-establishment Republicans bicker with the establishment Republicans, because now they have Congress, both houses of Congress,
52 seats in the Senate.
Yeah, and then the White House, and assuming with Scalia's replacement, if Trump was to nominate a conservative, which I don't believe the Senate will allow him to get away with not nominating a conservative. So you're going to have a 5-4 conservative majority on the court, and you really end up with a situation. Well, now, okay, the Republicans have the three branches of government. We'll start to be able to discern very much so who's establishment, who's non-establishment, as they fight among themselves, let's say.
You're making me cross my fingers right now.
Yeah. Well, hey, you can move to Canada or Mexico if you don't want to watch it.
No way. USA's the best. There's no doubt.
I agree.
All right, let's move back. We're going to put that topic aside.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting.
Yeah.
Back to our little hometown, our little county.
Yeah.
Lots of interesting recent activity amongst the Measure D and C folks. A lot of campaigning on both sides. Looks like they have enough signatures for another special election coming up.
Right.
In regards to that topic.
Yeah.
Should we say that topic out loud?
Well, yeah, man.
I don't think it's a secret anymore.
No, yeah, that legalization of commercial marijuana production, and so certainly it's caused a lot of divisions in the county. Man, it's really interesting because with Measure C passing and Measure D not passing, now what we've seen is discussion today about, well, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? Well, as best I can gather, the current urgency ordinance is in place until February 14th.
I agree.
Then it expires, and it's up to the Board of Supervisors to renew it. Now, with what happened with the Board of Supervisors races, we know very clearly by the positions of the supervisors who will be taking office in January that they will not renew it. So it will expire February 14th. In the meantime, I suppose, so the registered growers in this season will finish that out, but then it raised the question, well, with Measure C passing, Measure C, the text clearly says it becomes effective upon passage by the voters.
That's correct.
Which was yesterday or today, But it also talks about taxation of the growers in tax filings beginning June 15th and December 15th, which raises a little bit of confusion by people out there. Well, December 15th is coming up. So what year?
Am I filing for this?
The ordinance didn't
previous
say.
Or the go forward?
Which is, I think, a monumental lapse in the text is, well, what year are you talking about? I mean, it becomes effective November when it's passed, but now you're talking about, tax filings June 15th, December 15th. I think it was an oversight because everybody assumed and knew that we're talking about 2017.
Right.
But the ordinance actually doesn't say 2017. And if you apply it to 2016, you then run into the problem of it being an ex post facto law, which the U.S. Constitution clearly prohibits. You can't pass a law on a grower saying, well, you're going to be taxed per square foot. Yeah, and say, well, you know, that grower filed for a certain square footage of canopy, and now finds out he owes this $2 a square foot after the fact. So that doesn't make sense. I mean, that I would presume would be legally challenged. You know,
someone somewhere
would say, wait a second. Yeah. So I guess it has to be next year, but it's interesting that the measure didn't really make that clear. So I think where we go here as a county with the two is obviously we're not going to have commercial marijuana production next year as a county. Now you have...
Assuming the ordinance does expire and is not renewed, and I think that's a fair assumption based on your slate of supervisors.
Yeah.
They've said so themselves.
And that's what they ran on. So unless there was something that showed up to, you know, that was material that convinced them otherwise. But even at that, the urgency ordinance, remember, took 4 out of 5 votes. So you're certainly not going to get a slate like that. Now, to convolute matters a bit more, we have the recreational use at the state level, Prop 64.
Prop 64.
So,
makes it
all right,
much more exciting.
Every individual can grow 6 plants without medical need, apparently. All right, so how does this work in with previous propositions like 420 or 215 or whatever on, I think it was 215, but, you know, medicinal use and co-ops and collectives, and I'll tell you what, the business I wish I'm in right now was marijuana law.
Yeah, I wish I was an attorney.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're going to have plenty of billable hours the next few months figuring this all out.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. I mean, you see the other states that have adopted recreational and personal use of marijuana, and they're not too far away from us, Oregon, Washington. And it's kind of hard to... The news that comes out, depending on who you ask, is it's working really well. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
We're collecting a ton of money. No one says they're not collecting a ton of money. So the ton of money is there. Yeah. And you know what helps governments get along is tons of money.
Right.
They're always looking for revenue sources, of course, so they can run their other programs.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be...
When you get to it's a nightmare argument, there's always in any circumstance some negatives we can look at. And one thing I found in kind of the debate on the commercial marijuana use here in the county is there were a lot of negatives pointed to by the anti-Measure D proponents of anti-Measure D, right? Whatever that is. But those negatives or criticisms, as I watched them come out, seem to have already existed prior to commercial legalization. So look, there's problems with marijuana in a community. Then those problems exist whether marijuana is illegal or regulated. And so, you know, when you get to the, you know, okay, recreational use like Colorado and these other states and the nightmare side of the argument, yeah, but also didn't that nightmare exist prior to regulation and something? So not that those challenges shouldn't be addressed and defeated ultimately, but you know, the ultimate war on drugs or ban hasn't alleviated those problems. You know, that's kind of what I'm getting at. No more than, say, prohibition of alcohol in the 1920s alleviated drunken husbands beating their wives and kids. I mean, it still occurred and went on, and that was what the temperance movement was supposedly trying to eradicate. So I don't have all the answers. I'm just saying that there's on those two sides of the coin, boy, the problems seem to exist wherever we go as a society, whether we regulate or ban. And maybe the problems are deeper than the law.
It's going to be state laws say, here it comes.
Yeah.
So every county, city gets to decide, how do we want to attach ourselves to that state law? Because here it comes.
Right. You know, and that's really fortunate that there's enough leeway for communities to decide what their community is going to look like. So we saw Angels Camp decide what their
Right
community
away.
is going to look like. Yeah. And the real benefit here, if I was going to make an argument or a cry to viewers today to be proponents for one particular thing in America, I would say be proponents of federalism. We want government devolved from high levels of government all the way down to local levels of government. We want as many issues handled at the local level as possible. Because that way you get to decide what your local community is going to look like, and it's a very quick move. We see it with school districts, for example.
Yeah,
you don't like the football team over
go
here,
over there.
or he's having trouble with his teacher, you move over a
That's
neighborhood, right? Piece of cake, problem solved. Boy, wouldn't that be great if we could decide that on taxes? You know, hey, I don't like how the taxes are here or the business regulations are here, and you just had to move over a neighborhood or a community. So devolve political power to the closest denominator of the people, and you actually get to live in a community that reflects your values. And so that is a nice thing on this very controversial issue, that local communities are getting to make these decisions for themselves.
Inside the parameters,
Within
whatever
the
their
parameters of
state, whatever their state allows.
And thank
them
God
to.
we've got 50 states. You know, and we've seen the exodus. There's been plenty of people in Nevada or Colorado or Texas and other places.
But we have the nicest weather. Come on.
And that's why we've had
California's
plenty of people come in
nicest
too.
weather.
Yeah.
And our town's nice. Nice guys live in our town.
Yeah. This is a great place to live.
It's a great place to be.
That's why we keep having people come here.
Oh, what else is on my cheat sheet that they gave me? Oh. Prohibition on plastic single-use bags.
Yeah, well.
Even worth discussing, or
yeah.
a little odd off topic. And
well, you know
how
what's
it
really
affects
interesting
me.
about this one is that our county voted overwhelmingly to retain plastic bags. They voted against the proposition, but the state I think slightly passed it. It wasn't like 51, 52%.
It was close, but it did
but it did pass. So. So on that train of thought, think about a couple ways in which our community is different than the rest of the state.
Sure.
Here, we'd like to use plastic single-use bags in the grocery store. Second of
Apparently
all,
we do.
Yeah. But the state says we can't.
Yeah. Well.
Second of all, we would like to be able to buy ammunition without a background check or any type of registry.
And also, so that has to do with the limit on the types of ammunition and the size of the magazine, if I'm understanding the proposition correctly.
Yeah, and the statewide vote went for it. So now we've got here, and this was one thing. Went for the proposition, for the
ban, for the additional regulation in regard to buying ammunition and high clip magazines.
Yeah, and it went decidedly in favor of it. I don't remember if it was 55 or 63%, somewhere in that ballpark. But our county went almost 2 to 1, decidedly against it. So here we have a couple of issues that really are personal liberty issues. You know, whether take the plastic bag issue as a personal liberty issue. This is not an environmental issue. Okay?
Don't use it.
Don't use it if you don't want to. It's also a private sector business issue.
Yeah.
Okay, I decide as a private sector business, this is how we're going to package. If the guy then takes those plastic bags home and throws them in the river, well, he's polluted the environment, not the grocery store who issued the bags. You know, so it's a liberty-oriented issue. Same goes with the firearms and ammunition. And our county seemed to definitely, identify a way that was very different than the state, which means fly your state of Jefferson flag.
Well, I think especially when you're in a rural county, which our county is, our feelings are different. Our environment is different. The people who live here are different. We do different things in our county that we don't have to. If you live in San Francisco or Los Angeles, it's very different. Your day-to-day routine.
Yeah.
They are not used to the open self-responsibility that you have to have living in a rural community.
Right. I like the fact you use that. Yeah, self-responsibility. You have to. Be self-disciplined.
Clean up your own mess out here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you also have to take care of your own personal defense as well. I mean, we have limited resources and a large geographic area. It can be a half hour before a deputy gets to you. Okay, it's not the sheriff's office's fault. They've got limited resources.
all.
They're doing the very best job they can, and boy, Lord help us, we all hope that they get plenty more resources. But in the meantime, guess what? I'm going to help them by having ammunition and a loaded firearm. And when Sheriff Rick shows up, he'll know I did a good job. Yeah.
Shoot carefully.
That's right, yeah.
Oh, Rick. Rick, if you're watching this,
That's right.
don't take it personally. All right, what else? What other exciting things came our way in this election? Ooh, let's see. Bonds. Man, I don't want to talk about bonds.
Yeah.
The tobacco tax. Not that I smoke cigarettes, but golly gee.
Me either, but
$2 a pack.
I'll tell you
I
what.
feel bad for my friends who do.
Yeah.
Because that became expensive all of a sudden.
That was one of the most interesting propositions on the ballot to me, because the state tax on cigarettes went from 87 cents a pack to 287. And unless you really read the details in the voter guide about it, you wouldn't have been aware that e-cigarettes had no excise taxes on them, and now they're going to go to $3.37 on an e-cigarette. I guess it's a pack of them or something. I don't know.
I have no idea
What they're sold in.
I don't know anything about e-cigarettes, man. I'm sorry.
But they were not considered an other tobacco product until this proposition passed, and now they'll fall under that. So here's somebody who was making a transition from cigarettes to e-cigarettes for their own health, just got walloped, man. Yeah.
It's going to be a rough one.
And you know, one of the tenets of economics is if you want less of something, tax it. Or conversely, if you tax something, you'll get less of it. So here, if you wanted for a public health service to move people from cigarettes to e-cigarettes,
you've done exactly the opposite.
Right. You've now just thrown a $3.37 tax on a place that you wanted them to go from a public health standpoint. So, but such is the mind of the tax raiser, you know. And what's also interesting in that is in 1988, 24% of Californians smoked cigarettes. Now we're down to 12% as of 2013. So the revenue that they're bringing in from this is declining.
It's gone in half.
So what do? They raise the tax on it, which, you know, eventually, I suppose, nobody will smoke anymore. It'll get too expensive.
Then we'll have no tax on it because no one will buy them.
Yeah, and then what do? They'll shift the tax to some other thing.
Gas tax. Oh, wait.
Throw it on there.
They've already done that, right?
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, property tax. Oh, wait, we did that too.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Income tax, that surcharge on incomes over $250,000, that passed. So that's going to stay in place.
It's going to be an interesting few years coming up. Anyways, Cory, man, it's good to see you.
Yeah, you too, Jim.
To see you.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Be careful, of course. Do your best, as you always do.
Yeah, you too.
So in case you guys didn't know, our friend Cory Burnell, wealth management, all-around good guy, Taxpayer Association member, proud member. So if there's something you need, you can always reach out to Cory. You can always find him in his office, or I think he's in the yellow pages.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is